Hello everybody, and welcome back to Random Vids. So I want to say, 3 months ago, I was doing a lot of SpongeBob videos. I was talking about some of the worst episodes and some of the best episodes, and they were a lot of fun to do, and they got a lot of views. You guys seem to really enjoy them. So today, I'm going to be sort of bringing that back with two episodes, one being this week, next one probably being next week, and I'm going to be talking about the worst SpongeBob episode per season. Same rules for last time. We have 12 seasons, therefore there's going to be 12 episodes I'm going to be talking about. No season 13, since that season I'm not sure if it's finished or not, but I haven't seen any of season 13 yet, so I can't really talk about those episodes yet. I will talk about seasons 1 through 12 though, and I'm just going to be looking at what episode in those seasons really triggered me the most. Which one was so obnoxious, annoying, horrible, boring, pointless episode that made it the worst in that season. I feel like that'd be a kind of fun thing to do, just to find the worst episode per season, and then next week maybe we'll do the best episode per season. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video, and let's start off with Season 1. So my number one least favorite episode from Season 1 of SpongeBob is The Paper. Season 1 is a little weird. It doesn't really have any, terribly bad episodes. More just, so boring it is bad type of episodes. And unfortunately, The Paper just had to be one of the worst. So Squidward throws a wrapper away, gives it to SpongeBob, who constantly annoys Squidward about if he should keep it, I guess. I don't know what the words are. If Squidward is sure that SpongeBob is allowed to have it. So when Squidward finally, well, I shouldn't say Squidward, when SpongeBob finally gets the memo that he can have it, then he has the most fun with this stupid piece of paper. I think he has a little too much fun, because then Squidward notices and he wants to join in the fun as well. So he constantly tries to find different things to get his mind off of this stupid piece of paper. But SpongeBob, being the nice neighbor he is, does everything super loudly and in plain sight of Squidward to make him feel bad. And then it gets to the point where Squidward wants the paper back from SpongeBob, who refuses to give it back because SpongeBob clearly remembers Squidward saying he can have the paper no matter how much he may beg or plead or cry, so SpongeBob will make sure he holds on to that promise. So then Squidward tries to do things to get his mind off of that. Like he gives SpongeBob literally all of his stuff, including his house, including the shirt, just for the piece of paper. Once Squidward finally has the piece of paper, he tries to do things that SpongeBob would do, and wouldn't you guess it, of course, it didn't work. So now Squidward is left without a house, heck, even without a frickin' shirt, and the paper that he so desperately wanted won't even work now. Heck, even Patrick comes and just takes the paper like, oh, look, a worthless piece of paper. Ay, ay, ay. The only good thing I could say about this episode is some of the things that SpongeBob does come up. Some of the ideas SpongeBob comes up with playing with the paper is interesting, but it's such a pain to watch. And there's been many episodes where Squidward has been obsessed with something that SpongeBob has. Like, for example, in a much better episode in Season 3 called The Idiot Box. No, wait. The Idiot Box is something else I'm thinking of. At least I think it's the one. Anyway, it's one from Season 3 where SpongeBob and Patrick get a box, and they use their imagination to pretend that a bunch of things are happening, and then when Squidward tries, nothing really happens. You see, I feel like that episode does a much, much better job of Squidward getting, wanting something that SpongeBob has, and then ends up getting it just to find out that it doesn't really work. And at least he has a few minutes of happiness in that episode, too, where he thinks he's actually pretending he's driving, even though it's a dump truck taking him to the dumpster. So you see, that's how you do a Squidward episode. The paper is how you don't do a Squidward episode. Also, the fact that this episode is extremely, extremely boring. The whole episode is just Squidward trying to find things to do and not get distracted by the paper. It's just one of those, it's so boring, it's bad type episodes. And even though this wasn't really a thing back in the day, this would now be considered Squidward torture. Overall, The Paper is just such a pointless episode. It's just a pointless piece of paper, even Patrick said it himself. and even Squidward at one point. Overall, I can consider the paper the worst episode from Season 1, since it's the only one that bores me to death. All the others are either meh, okay, or actually good. With that, let's move on to Season 2. So, my number one least favorite SpongeBob episode from Season 2 is Gary Takes a Bath. Many times 3 months ago, I always said Gary is a pretty annoying character in some episodes, other times he ain't too bad. I can now confirm Gary is my least favorite SpongeBob character. Like, come on, he either has bad episodes or he's just annoying in others. And yes, I know, Gary is only a snail, he's supposed to be the pet, but there has been many episodes of SpongeBob showing Gary be smarter than SpongeBob. Heck, there was an episode in Season 12, Gary Got Legs, where Gary and SpongeBob basically switched lives. I don't know what to tell you, but Gary's my least favorite character, easily. So unfortunately, unlike Season 1, Season 2 actually had a few bad episodes. But it also had a lot of awesome episodes this season, which is why it's better than Season 1, but there's definitely a few bad ones in here. Gary Takes a Bath, though, just has to be my absolute favorite. Even way back when I watched it as a kid, I still completely agree with myself. Yet again, it's just another pointless episode. It's just 11 minutes of SpongeBob trying to find ways to give Gary a bath. Wow, how fun. This episode almost seems like a short we would have seen in Season 5 or something. It's that pointless and stupid. Also the fact that it just doesn't work. The whole time Gary is stupidly stubborn and doesn't want to take that bath. Now if this was a normal pet owner, they'd probably just make them... I don't know. Cats are a little difficult when it comes to baths. And I don't know. SpongeBob put Gary on timeout? I don't know. Oh, but yeah, SpongeBob's too nice to do that, so instead he just gets himself tortured more and more and more as the episode goes on just to give Gary a bath. And Gary the whole time refuses it and is all for torturing his owner to not take a bath. I mean, I guess in real life, cats scratch you if you give them a bath, most of them at least, but this is a cartoon, come on. Finally, SpongeBob breaks down and literally takes the bath to him, but unfortunately, Gary is 2 steps ahead. So Gary leads SpongeBob up a tree just to destroy a record player, takes the ladder away, and then makes SpongeBob think that he's gonna take a mud bath. But it's not Gary who's taking the mud bath, it's SpongeBob, which then the episode ends with him taking a bath. And Gary's just there smiling away, knowing he's getting away with it because SpongeBob honestly is too stupid to notice. Well, not to notice, but like too stupid and too nice to just do anything. This episode just makes me feel bad for SpongeBob. You know what? Get rid of Gary and get, like, Spot. Like, something that Plankton has. Like, please, get rid of Gary. I'm tired of him. And this ain't the only episode that SpongeBob couldn't get Gary a bath. There was an episode in Season 7, I forget what it was called, but SpongeBob was trying to give Gary a bath, and he wouldn't. Instead, he gave Plankton a bath. I think you know that episode. Shellback Shenanigans, I think it's called. Anytime SpongeBob tries to give Gary a bath, I just groan like, oh no, here we go again. And like I said 3 months ago, that's why it makes Pet Sitter Pat seem like a wonderful, like, awesome, adventured episode. And why is that? Because Patrick can actually find a way to give Gary a bath. Finally, after all these years, Gary finally gets the bath that he deserves. And yeah, I mean, the way Patrick does it is a lot, but I mean, at least Patrick found a way to give Gary a bath. If Gary won't do it in the sink or bathtub, sure, we'll just bring the hose in instead. SpongeBob, you need to take notes from Patrick, because he actually did a good job bathing Gary. And no, I'm not saying Pet Sitter Pat is a good episode, because it ain't, but I mean, it is a lot better than this episode, that's for sure. The only thing I liked about this episode is when SpongeBob said whoever takes a bath first in this house gets money or something, and then Mr. Krabs just rolls in with a bathtub and takes the money. That was the only good part about this episode. Other than that, it's a pointless Season 2, horrible Gary episode. With that, now let's move on to Season 3. So my least favorite episode from Season 3 is Party Pooper Pants. This is one of those dumb episodes where you have to hate literally every single character and every single character. Like I said before, I don't quite remember this episode that much, but at the same time, I do remember it. SpongeBob invites all of his friends to a party where he wants to do things his way, which of course makes his friends upset. So they end up locking him outside and them having the party by themselves. So then most of the rest of the episode is just SpongeBob trying to get back into his house. Then the cops come, arrest SpongeBob for not inviting them to his party. And then the episode kind of ends somewhere in there. I swear, every time I see this episode, I just skip it. It's just so pointless. Also, the fact that half of this episode is just Patchy the Pirate. Hooray, I watched SpongeBob to see Tom Kenny as a pirate. It's just the most boring stuff ever, and it's just so cringy, too. I don't like how they take over, like, all the specials. And thank the Lord that we only get, like, one Patchy episode per season now, which is nice. A lot better than, like, every single special, like, back in these days. I feel like from, like, I want to say probably, I think after the disaster, which was Truth or Square from Season 6, I think after that they showed Patchy a lot less, which is nice. We got a few episodes, like It's a SpongeBob Christmas, the Furl Friends, of course, SpongeBob's Big Birthday Blowout, etc. We got a few of those, but it wasn't as bad as what we used to get. Overall, I have nothing for this episode. It's just such a boring waste of space. And that's a shame, since Season 3 had a lot of really good episodes. Unfortunately, Party Pooper Pants is just one of the worst episodes. It's definitely not the worst episode of all time. I think it is better than Gary Takes a Bath and The Paper, but that's just because I don't see this episode that much. Overall, it's a boring mess, and I'm done talking about this episode. So now let's move on to Season 4, and my number one least favorite Season 4 episode is Driven to Tears. Oh boy, we've reached modern SpongeBob, or I guess mid-SpongeBob now. And yes, Season 4 unfortunately has a lot of just more bad episodes, or just more boring ones than the original 3. That's not to say that they're all boring, because there definitely is a lot of good ones, but we got to see a lot of really bad things starting this season as well. Like, for example, the Squidward torture. This was the first season that started that, and it's still going on to this day for some reason. Another terrible thing this season started was the stupidly annoying Patrick episodes. Patrick is just one of the characters that just went so far downhill as the seasons went on. He went from a lovable idiot to just a horrible jerk. I mean, I guess modern SpongeBob, it is a little better than mid-SpongeBob, but nothing compared to classic SpongeBob. So guess what? Driven to Tears is about Patrick. SpongeBob failed his boating license again, so he cries to Patrick about it, and Patrick goes in and does it first try, because of course he does. So he ends up getting a very cool brand new boat, and of course, SpongeBob is very jealous. And Patrick clearly knows that SpongeBob wants that, but he still continues to rub it in his face. Like, for example, he drives SpongeBob to work, and then goes through the drive-thru and plays his annoying horn. And then it gets to the point where he goes through 3 traffic lights or something like that. Then SpongeBob rips up his license, and they both fight. So then the cops come because of the littered license that SpongeBob threw, and they're just about to throw Patrick in jail, which is what we've all been waiting to see, but no, SpongeBob, being the stupid idiot he is, says, no, take me instead, so then SpongeBob goes to jail. Are you kidding me? This whole episode probably wouldn't be the worst in this season if that ending just wouldn't have happened. There's another episode in this season, Good Neighbors, which I think would be a lot more deserving of the number 1 spot, but because that ending we got in this episode, ugh. And I guess the ending is okay with SpongeBob getting let out of jail, then him and Patrick become friends again, but that feels so forced. Like, come on. You literally just had a really big argument with Patrick, and now you guys are like best friends again. SpongeBob, you have much better friends, like Sandy, for an example. Heck, even frickin' Mr. Krabs. Or even Squidward. Anyone but Patrick, please. Basically, what's this episode about? SpongeBob torture. And no, not the fun way like what we would get in a Squidward torture episode, no. It's just one of those dumb Patrick gets exactly what he wants and doesn't get punished at all in the slightest. Those episodes, along with the Squidward torture, are some of the most stupidest stuff that the show had to come up with. And because Patrick doesn't get punished at all in this episode, it has to be the worst episode of season 4. At least episodes like Rule of Dumb, Patrick sort of got punished in that episode and even realized his ways. Driven to tears, he's just like, he gets nothing. He doesn't get punished at all, whatsoever. So this episode is just terrible. Alright, we better move on to season 5 before I rage even more. So, the worst episode of season 5 is... good old what's his name? This episode is probably the best episode so far, and no, I am not saying it's a good episode. It is definitely a bad episode, but out of all the ones we've talked about so far, this one is probably the best one out of them all. Oh boy, season 5. A very odd season. A lot of the episodes, yet again, just weren't necessarily bad, just really boring. And I mean, season 5 was the season that SpongeBob really started to fall downhill and started to dig itself into its deep grave. So out of all the episodes, which one's the worst? Of course, it's going to be good old what's-his-name. Basically, it's just Squidward and SpongeBob running around the Krusty Krab to find out everyone's name there, and then we meet a unknown fellow that we've never seen in the show before. He tells Squidward in a not really telling way that his name is What's It To Ya, which of course any normal human being, or Squidward, would be like, huh? So Squidward tries again and again, and eventually just ends up taking his wallet just to find his name. But here's the thing, why does Squidward really want to know this guy's name? Well, Mr. Krabs promised them if they could find out everyone's name, then he'll give them a vacation. So of course, Squidward wants the vacation, so he tries to find out everyone's name. Unfortunately, like I said, it goes too far. Squidward takes the wallet, runs through town, and then the police end up getting involved and send Squidward to jail. But at least he found out What's It To Ya's name is, which is a very, very odd name that I have never heard before. Oh yeah, and apparently that vacation that Mr. Krabs promised Squidward is just a postcard, so Squidward isn't really going on vacation. The only thing I like is that Squidward actually sort of wins in a weird twisted way, because he did beat SpongeBob, which has to be winning for something. They just executed it in a very poor way. And just overall, it boils down to another one of those dumb Squidward torture episodes. I don't understand why the show wanted Squidward to be such a big punching bag. Like, why? It's one thing for someone like Scott from Total Drama Island, because Scott was introduced to us as the punching bag. Also, he was the technical villain of Revenge of the Island, so we kind of wanted him to get a little hurt. Plus, they did a good job showing us, between him and Fang and everything that went on between them, and that was actually funny. And they didn't do it all the time, and it wasn't annoying either. It was actually funny to see. And it made Scott just a really interesting character, and I like Scott. But this just doesn't work. Even if, Total Drama was definitely starting to go downhill around that time, too, at least they tried. SpongeBob didn't even try anymore at Season 5. They're like, here's a handful of boring episodes, and I hope you enjoy. And we will keep what you didn't like about Season 4 into Season 5, and so on and so forth. Overall, just a very boring episode with Squidward torture. Now let's move on to Season 6, and my number one least favorite episode of Season 6 is... Choir Boys. Ladies and gentlemen, we have reached that infinite season. Season 6! Why does every Season 6 have to be so bad? First SpongeBob, then Total Drama Island. Why? Why is Season 6 just such a bad season? This season was terrible. Between all of the Squidward torture episodes, to pointless filler episodes, to Patrick being annoying episodes, this season was a mess. This is the complete opposite of the original 3 seasons. There was only, a few awesome or good episodes in this season, and then the rest were garbage. And what's the worst out of all of those? Definitely Choir Boys. And yes, just like good old What's-Its-Name, it's another fun Squidward torture episode, because that's what everyone wants nowadays, right? It's simple. Squidward's gonna sing with a choir, so the whole episode is just him getting there. Literally, there's no plot or anything. It's just Squidward going from point A to point B. And no, it's not like that episode from Season 9, the point A to point B episode. I forget what that one's called. That one was actually not bad. Choir Boys is. And of course, guess who stops Squidward along the way? SpongeBob! Because SpongeBob's bored, so he wants to just torment Squidward some more. And SpongeBob desperately wants Squidward to hear his solo, which Squidward clearly doesn't want to, but SpongeBob wants to anyway. So he'll let Squidward sit in a literal thing of jellyfish just for him to hear this solo that doesn't even matter. Squidward finally ties SpongeBob up, and unfortunately the jellyfish come and save him. Because, of course they do. And they take SpongeBob to the choir room. And, of course, it's just... I lost my train of thought. Anyway, Squidward gets there first and sings terrible, so we get to see 5 minutes of him clearing his throat, etc. SpongeBob comes, and of course, he's the one who ends up singing good. And then the episode just kind of ends with Squidward just not being able to sing. Another thing I really hate about this episode is the filler. There is so many times where this episode moves at a snail's pace. It is so painful to watch, it ain't even funny. Remember back in the day where we had these fast-paced episodes? Well, now everything is just so slow. The creators were really running out of ideas at this point, and they were just like, fine, we'll make a little things happen, but we're gonna make it drag on. I am so glad we are past this point in Season 12 and 13. Everything is really fast-paced. In fact, it's more fast-paced than the original seasons, which is nice. It makes it so much more watchable, and it makes those seasons awesome. Choir Boys is a horrible episode. It's Squidward torture, it's filler, it's unfair, it's not fun to watch, it's stupid, and in my opinion, it's the worst episode from Season 6. So with that, let's just move on to Season 7. So my least episode from Season 7 is... Yours, Mine, and Mine. Honestly, this episode is probably just the worst episode in the show. Like, I can't think of any episode that could surpass this pile of garbage. Okay, so, do you guys like Patrick? Well, I'm sure after watching this episode, he will be your least favorite character, because he definitely was mine, well, until I rewatched Gary Takes a Bath, then it was Gary again. Basically, Patrick wants a Krabby Patty. He can't get one. He's broke, I guess. So SpongeBob pays for it, but he promises to share the meal, which Patrick agrees to, but then he ends up eating the whole thing anyway. But then Mr. Krabs has the genius idea to make a toy, which is actually kind of interesting. So SpongeBob has it, and Patrick says, oh, aren't we supposed to share the toy? But SpongeBob's like, okay, we can share it. Unfortunately, like I said, Patrick, this is mid-season Patrick, he is stupidly unlikable. So then Patrick has the toy. For the rest of work, for the rest of the day, for all night, and for most of the next frickin' day. SpongeBob had it for all of 2 seconds, and Patrick had it the rest of the time. It's just so annoying to see. So when Patrick finally lets SpongeBob have it for like 1 second, they both fight over it, and then that's basically the rest of the episode. And then Patrick's like, fine, if I can't have it, then no one can have it, and he eats the Krabby Patty. So, no one can have it, except for Patrick, who gets to eat a second Krabby Patty, because, you know, he's super nice. But then the episode ends with Mr. Krabs giving both SpongeBob and Patrick a Krabby Patty toy, and then Patrick using SpongeBob's wallet to pay for it. And then, of course, he has to blunt out, haven't you learned anything about sharing? I know, this season had the infinite episode, one-course meal, which is everyone's least favorite episode of the show, and I can completely understand why people hate that episode so much. It's a dumb, terrible Season 7 episode, but it just doesn't upset me as much as this one. It's like, how can you make Driven to Tears even worse? You make Yours, Mine, and Mine, that's what. It just boils down to another horrible Patrick episode. Him being so stupid that it's not funny. And I'm sure everyone is so tired at this point of Patrick just being so unlikable. We're all ready to go back to classic Patrick, why haven't they done it yet? Oh, because it's Season 7, that's why. Duh. We can wait till Season 8, then the show can start getting better. But for Season 7, I hope it's just like Season 6 2.0. Yet again, I just hate how much Patrick gets away with in this episode. He gets to eat two Krabby Patties, gets the Krabby Patty toy the most, and doesn't get punished for it at all in the slightest. The only time he gets punished is no times. And that really ticks me off. Back in the day, when Patrick would do something, he would get punished for it, or like any character. Nowadays, they just get punished for no reason, and it's no fun to watch. Or in this case, they don't get punished when they really need to. And it's just so annoying to watch. Patrick is a whiny little baby who desperately is in need for a timeout. Like, a very, very long timeout. And by timeout, I mean he should probably be in jail at this point. So even if there is a lot of bad episodes in Season 7, and if One Course Meal is everyone's least favorite episode, none of them just made me as mad as this episode. It had a terrible start, a terrible middle, and a terrible ending. And I know, I raged about it a lot back 3 months ago when I was talking about the worst Season 7 episodes. But, I mean, this episode, it's just so bad. Like, what were they thinking when they made this episode? I think it's time they need to stop at this point, which I'm glad we've gotten past this point, but good lord. So, yeah, this is the worst episode of Season 7, and in my opinion, it's probably the worst SpongeBob episode of all time. Whew, let's move on to Season 8. And my least favorite episode of Season 8 is... Are You Happy Now? I mean, that's a good question. Am I happy right now? Well, I came to watch SpongeBob, to get away from life and stuff, so I want to see a really happy, fun episode. So at the beginning of this episode, seeing the title card, I guess I am happy. That's not to say to the end of this episode, though. I could say, no, I'm not happy. I'm disturbed. Around 3 months ago, when I was talking about the worst Season 8 episodes, Are You Happy Now was more of an honorable mention, because I was just like, well, it's just a Squidward being depressed episode, and it's stupid, but I mean, it ain't the worst from Season 8. Honestly, I considered Season 8 a pretty good season, and a very good comeback. Definitely not a perfect season, nor my favorite, but a good comeback. I still agree, but I found an episode that's a lot worse than any of the others. Basically, SpongeBob is telling Squidward about his happiest memories. So then Squidward tries and doesn't have a happiest memory. So SpongeBob tries to help Squidward out to create a happy memory, which all ends horribly, and then Squidward just says, you know what, I don't have a happy memory, and if I do, it would not be with you. 2 weeks later, and Squidward falls into a deep, deep depression. So now SpongeBob's just there hoping that Squidward's doing okay. And yet again, still trying to get Squidward happy from being depressed. Towards the end of the episode, SpongeBob takes Squidward to the Krusty Krab just for him to destroy a bunch of, SpongeBobs. Because SpongeBob made a bunch of SpongeBobs. I don't know how... A bunch of... what's the word? Not toy, but like... Fine, what do you say? SpongeBob made art. And then Squidward destroyed it. And then he finally found his happiest memory at the end. But the whole time I was thinking, I don't think Squidward did really find his happiest memory. It's just more him destroying SpongeBob because he don't like him. And then the episode just kind of ends. Like I said, back like 3 months ago or so, I mean, this episode was bad, but I probably wouldn't consider it the worst of Season 8. Now, I can definitely say it is the worst episode of Season 8. I come to watch SpongeBob to be happy. I don't want to see an episode that's just... ugh. Honestly, sometimes I really like when SpongeBob's really, relatable to real life. This episode, not so much. I know people who struggle with depression, and after seeing this episode just being so relatable, it's just... ugh. I don't want to watch SpongeBob to see Squidward be depressed the whole frickin' episode. I want to watch it to have fun and enjoy it. I think this episode is worse than, One Course Meal, just because the Plankton suicide scene was only for a little bit of the episode. Are You Happy Now is just for the whole frickin' episode. Heck, there was 2 scenes in this episode that got deleted because they were too suicidal. Like, for example, when Squidward throws a rope up, you all probably know what he's thinking in his head. No, he just ends up pulling out a bird thing, clam, whatever you want to call it. But why make that joke? It's not funny at all whatsoever. This is a serious situation, and the show is just laughing at it. And this episode could yet again just also boil down to another dumb Squidward torture episode, because yes, he does get tortured in this episode, as we know. Like I said, by the end of this episode, I am not happy now. In fact, I'm concerned about the show and the way that it's going after this episode. I understand mid-SpongeBob was really tough, but come on, really? You know you're out of ideas when you make the main cast get depressed. Like, come on. It is not a fun topic to talk about, and I don't know why SpongeBob had to do it in the first place. Also, the fact that it's SpongeBob, literally the last show that could ever talk about depression. Overall, I consider this episode terrible, and it is easily the worst episode of Season 8, probably the only bad episode of Season 8. So let's move on, and let's get happier again, yeah? Anyway, let's move on to Season 9, and my least favorite episode of Season 9 is Mutiny on the Krusty. You know what, I'm just tired at this point talking about pointless, bad SpongeBob episodes. But we have 3 more seasons to go, plus this one. Mutiny on the Krusty is just such a boring plot mess. Basically, the Krusty Krab gets caught in a hurricane tornado thing. And I guess Mr. Krabs is in charge, and then at one point, Squidward's in charge, and then Mr. Krabs is back in charge, but he wants them to beg to get him back in charge, whatever you want to call it. And then the episode just kind of ends with everyone pulling the Krusty Krab back to its original location. Huh? Honestly, this episode just bores me to death, and it's just so, it's a little bad too, and it's so boring it's bad. It's just weird seeing everyone beg to Mr. Krabs to take him back. Especially SpongeBob, since remember back in the day, for example, like the Pretty Patties episode, SpongeBob did not let Mr. Krabs and Squidward boss him around like that. When they laughed at his idea, he left and made his own stand. But no, this one he only needs Mr. Krabs. Mr. Krabs, he looks up to no one else. SpongeBob's just so spineless in this episode, and that's a shame, since basically all the other Season 9 episodes are so good. Season 9 is the first episode in a while that I could actually call a good season. I mean, Season 8 was pretty good, but it did still suffer a lot from the mid-SpongeBob. Season 9 is what I could call the first, modern season. And I mean, to be fair, classic SpongeBob did have their episodes too, so I mean, I guess we need at least one bad episode per season, but I don't like this one. Also, the fact that it's really lazily made, too. When they get to this unknown, mysterious place, it's just the same location, but with rocks around them. How cool. Remember back in Season 1? Frickin' Season 1? Made 10 years before this? We got SB-129 or whatever, where Squidward visits a bunch of different locations. The setting didn't remain the same that time. Overall, this is just another dumb, pointless SpongeBob episode, and it's easily my least favorites from Season 9. Let's move on to my favorite season, Season 10, and my least favorite episode from that would be Sports. I tried to mix it up for you guys. I just can't really ever find a bad Season 10 episode, since Season 10 did a pretty good job overall. So I guess one that isn't my favorite would be Sports. And I mean, if I could, I would add the Clam Up short, but I wanted to mix it up for you guys. The Clam Up short, whatever, would be my least favorite episode, I guess, if you want to call it that, of Season 10. But I guess if I had to pick an episode, I guess this one would have to be my least favorite. So it's SpongeBob and Patrick find a box of sports who belong to Sandy. So they use it all the wrong way, which is actually pretty funny to see. And then Squidward notices and decides, maybe I could teach them the wrong way to play sports. Which you actually get a lot of funny scenes with SpongeBob and Patrick trying to do the sports the wrong way. And then they end up building a whole stadium just to watch them play. So then Sandy notices that her sports equipment are missing, and then finds out that SpongeBob and Patrick are using them, and Squidward is the, I guess, big bad guy of this episode, if you want to call it that. And of course, Sandy is not happy about this, so she challenges Squidward to a bunch of games to see who's better, and she plays by not even Squidward's rules, she plays by her rules, and that's I don't even know what you call it. intense roles, I guess you want to call it that. Basically, Sandy plays rough, and she will make sure Squidward will get tortured. Yeah, this is our season 10 Squidward torture episode. I'm happy at least we get one per season rather than 8 per season. I'm looking at you, season 6. And I'm glad we're back to the, I guess he sort of deserved getting tortured rather than tortured because he exists. Wait, maybe that's why Squidward was depressed in Am I Happy Now? He was so tired of getting tortured in all those episodes, he's just done. That would be a stupid theory, though. Anyway, back to sports. No, it was not fun seeing Squidward be tortured by Sandy. I don't think he really deserved it. To be fair, SpongeBob and Patrick did start it. They were destroying his garden and his whole front lawn. And of course, that is the only reason why Squidward decided to teach him how to play it the wrong way. Which was actually fun to see SpongeBob and Patrick get tortured rather than Squidward all the time. He gets to sit back, relax, and watch the show, and that's how the whole episode should have went. I don't think the whole thing with Sandy beating up Squidward really needed to be included, especially since she ended up playing like literally every sport with him. I understand, she wanted to teach Squidward a lesson and all, but I just don't feel like it was really deserved in this episode. Squidward was actually happy for once, and Sandy just had to go and ruin it. Thanks a lot, Sandy. You're my second least favorite character next to Gary. Overall, though, I don't hate this episode, and there is some parts of it that I find actually pretty good. But, I mean, I had to pick a worst from Season 10, so sports it is. Now let's move on to Season 11. And so my least favorite episode of Season 11 is Squirrel Jelly. Speaking of Sandy being my second least favorite character in the show, now we have another annoying Sandy episode. Hooray. Basically, Sandy plays with SpongeBob and Patrick and gets annoyed how slow they're playing things. So Sandy really intenses things up, and it ain't looking good. It gets to the point where she even ends up beating up her own friends just to win. So then SpongeBob and Patrick try to get away from Sandy and go jellyfishing, and of course, Sandy follows. Sandy tries to capture all of the jellyfish, and because that didn't work out well, she ended up changing them into jelly buzzsaws or whatever. After seeing what she ended up destroying jellyfish fields, she decides to think about everything. And then she ends up going complete 180 and just is a big old relaxer now, whatever you want to call it. Unfortunately, she forgot there's still the jelly buzzsaws, which turns into one giant jellyfish, destroys her house, and then she finally snaps and destroys the jellyfish. And then the episode just kind of ends, and we're back to square one. It's just, yet again, a very pointless Season 11 episode. And that's sad, since Season 11 is such a good season with so many good episodes. Unfortunately, this one just ain't that good. It's one heck of a lot better than something like Yours, Mine, and Mine, or Are You Happy Now, or Choir Boys, but for Season 11, it's definitely the worst. I just hate how horrible, like, Sandy is out of character in this episode. I thought we were past this point of characters getting out of character. I guess not. It's to the point where SpongeBob and Patrick are smarter than Sandy, and that's saying a lot, saying how they're the dumbest people in the show and Sandy is the smartest. Her intense roles just really ruin this episode. Also the fact that it's extremely boring to watch too. It's one of those episodes I probably won't ever watch much. And that's really all I have to say. Bad Season 11 episode. So now, the final season, Season 12. And my least favorite episode from Season 12 would be Quarantined Crab. I mean, there's just no other episode in Season 12 that would be number 1. This episode was so bad that it was banned from Season 12. Which is why the DVD I have Season 12 on doesn't have Quarantined Crabs. So when I was doing the worst Season 12 episodes like a few months ago, I had to watch it on YouTube to actually be like, how bad is this episode? It's a shame too, because I actually really enjoyed Season 12, even though I found out a lot of people don't really like Season 12 that much. I actually really enjoy it. I find it a really fun season. One heck of a lot better than the filler Season 6 mess and 7, that's for sure. But of course, no episode is perfect. And Quarantine Crabs, I mean, it was so bad it was banned. Who here remembers the year 2020? We got a little fun surprise called the coronavirus in 2020. So what does SpongeBob decide to do? Create an episode based off coronavirus. I literally just said this back in season 8, but I'm going to watch SpongeBob to get away from real life, not to be reminded of it. So why make an episode focused on COVID when you can do, oh gee, I don't know, any other ideas? And that's a shame too, because this ain't even season 8 anymore. We're in the seasons where they're actually doing good episodes again, and they're actually having good ideas. But this is not a good idea. It's just a boring episode where a health inspector comes and says, "Oh, one of you guys is sick. That's why we're quarantining all of you guys." And Mr. Krabs goes insane, and all the others, and then the episode just kind of ends with the health inspector being like, "Oh no, it was false," or something like that. I don't quite remember the whole episode. I've seen it only one time, and I will probably never see it again because why need to? Still, I don't think this is the worst episode of all time, but come on. You can do a lot better than Quarantined Crab. And I can consider this the worst episode of Season 12. With that, I hope you enjoyed this, and I will see you probably tomorrow. So, have a good day. Bye.